gap between the broader unemployment rate we've ever seen. So that's definitely some good news.
All right, definitely good news. Julia Coronado, professor at the University of Texas, Austin. Always good to talk to you. It's the Marketplace Morning Report from APM, American Public Media.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Personal Injury and Wrongful Death Law Firm. Injuries can happen when you least expect it. For over 40 years, our attorneys have dug out the facts to help juries decide what happened and who's at fault. More at waynehogan.law.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect with Melissa Ross. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
After 9 o'clock, this is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. The Florida Senate has passed a bill that funds efforts to protect historic and abandoned cemeteries. Chris Young reports that the bill was sparked by a history of neglect of African American cemeteries.
The Senate voted to pass a bill that would create a historic cemeteries program to provide grants to research, restore, and maintain abandoned African American cemeteries.
And in order to move forward, we have to find out what has been there in the past, where our history has gone, and where we will continue to go.
Democratic Senator Bobby Powell sponsored the bill. He was joined on the floor by House Minority Leader Fentress Driscoll, who sponsored the bill in the House. She said the idea was sparked by Zion Cemetery, Tampa's first African American cemetery. The cemetery was destroyed by the Housing Authority in the 20th century to build housing for mostly white communities.
Tampa Housing Authority built on top of an abandoned black cemetery, and money exchanged hands knowing that there was a black cemetery there. So it caused a lot of trauma and re-traumatization to the community once it was uncovered.
Numerous legislators and members of the public voiced support for the bill in the Senate, including Democratic Senator Geraldine Thompson.
There is so much in terms of our culture, so much in terms of our heritage, so many lives that were lived, so many sacrifices that were made, and we need to honor those individuals.
The bill passed unanimously. I'm Chris Young.
The small South Georgia town of Moultrie, about 2.5 hours north of Jacksonville, is the latest community to deal with a mass shooting. According to authorities, 4 people were fatally shot there yesterday. One of them, an employee at a McDonald's restaurant. Also killed were 2 relatives of the gunman who took his own life. It is calm and 73 degrees here in Jacksonville, low 80s today.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Opinions expressed on the Friday Media Roundtable are those of our panelists and do not necessarily reflect the views of WJCT News.
The mayoral candidates square off, sort of. Diana Green's tenure as superintendent of Duval Public Schools is coming to a close, and more rules surrounding who can use what restroom are approved. Just some of the stories that are making headlines this week. Good morning and live with you from Studio 2. I'm Dan Scanlon sitting in for Melissa Ross, and this is First Coast Connect, and thanks for listening. Just ahead, all the top stories of the week with our Friday Roundtable. If you want to talk about what we're talking about, give us a call at 549-2937. Then later, an update on the Sing Out Loud Festival, which is back and bigger than ever. But first, this hour is Friday, and here to round up all the week's news, we welcome my compatriot in the newsroom, Claire Heddles of Jacksonville Today.
Good morning, Dan.
Nate Monroe, former partner in crime at the Florida Times-Union.
Good morning, Dan.
Now he's there. Ben Becker from Action News Jax, right there, live from his porch on Zoom.
Dan, I'm all revved up and ready to go.
I can tell. And then Fred Matthews, who does a wonderful podcast called To My Way of Thinking and is a veteran journalist and a speaker of the truth around these places. So, again, don't forget, give us a yell at 549-2937. You can listen live on the radio or watch our video stream right now on Facebook and YouTube. So let's begin with the top story. An event intended to be a Jacksonville mayoral debate ended up one candidate short on Tuesday. As a result, Wednesday night, Democrat Donna Deegan stood alone, taking questions from a panel of Jacksonville journalists, including Nate Monroe. Republican Dan Davis, meanwhile, was across town for an untelevised conversation with parents. So why didn't Davis participate in the debate, and what did both candidates have to say about their respective appearances? Well, obviously on Channel 4, it was said more than once that Mr. Davis was asked if he invited to be there. They even offered to move the debate to another date. He said, nope, I have a prior, and there we go. So let's just open up with the fact that we've had 3 debates between.
Right.
Maybe that's it, and others that haven't. Who wants to open up with just the thoughts about Dan Davis not being present for these debates and leaving Donna with the stage alone?
Well, I mean, he got coverage. He got coverage because a couple of stations went there. And I'm sure the Times Union had someone there to cover the event. It is a news event. So he did get coverage, and some of the quotes that he made did make some television clips. So he got the coverage. And his feeling has been the same as it has been from the primary. Don't put yourself in a position where you could be questioned about things that you are not programmed to talk about. Only be in a position, only attend events, only answer questions from folks who are already pre-programmed to give you questions that you already have pre-programmed off answers for. And you don't need to sit next to an opponent that, quite frankly, you view to be a bit lesser than. And this is the playbook that they're coming from. Leanna Cumber did a bit of that during the primary. It just didn't work out too well for her because she wasn't favored by the party at all. But that's the playbook that Dan Davis is coming from. And quite frankly, it is probably what we're going to see if he were to be elected mayor. You're not going to see him except in pre-planned events that they already have. You're not going to go up to, 6th floor now and have it and meet with the mayor if you're not on the list.
I don't think I've ever met with the current mayor on the 6th floor, but back in the day, there was always the mayor's conference room, and that's where we hold the news conferences. Nate, you're certainly very much involved in this, in coverage, and you were there on Wednesday night as one of 4 journalists who had a comfortable chit-chat with Donna and no Dan Davis in sight. So your take.
Yeah, sure. Well, and to be fair, I've never met with the mayor on the 6th floor because it's the 4th floor.
Sorry, that's right.
Yeah, I can't let that one
I'm
go.
looking at the old city hall.
Thanks, Fred.
Yeah, I mean, this, I think as Fred said, it was not surprising to me that Daniel Davis is not as willing to do these kinds of events. He's running a prevent defense right now. This is what candidates who think that they're front runners do. He has the most money. He doesn't need additional exposure. And if he does, he has the money to do that himself in ways where he gets to kind of control the setting and the environment. I actually am interested in how that looks on the governing side, though, because one thing about being mayor, I mean, in a lot of ways, you actually have less control than you do as a candidate. You don't get to decide what problems arise in this vast bureaucracy that you're the head of. You don't get to decide what reporters are asking you. And I think one of the reasons that we have an expectation candidates do debates is because that kind of is the job. I mean, a lot of it is a communication job, and it's communicating in moments of difficulty or crisis, and in communicating in moments where you don't get to control what you're being asked. He has not been willing to do that. I think that it's fair to interpret his campaign just doesn't think that that's going to be a big part of what he's going to be doing as mayor. I think that's wrong. But it did not surprise me he did not show up.
Way back in the day, we had another businessman who was mayor, John Payton, now of Gate Petroleum. But John really surprised me. He started coming in and holding forums with residents. He would take questions and sit up on a bar stool on top of a stage and answer them. And he got to be a real communicator, which I think impressed me. Here's the business guy who showed why he was a good business guy, because he was listening and responding. So let me ask you, Ben, you certainly have the anchor desk and a voice in this one. What do you think of the lack of 2-on-2 or 1-on-1 with these candidates?
Well, I'll see Nate's sports analogy and I'll raise them. Putting together a debate is like a boxing match, right? You have promoters from each camp, and you have to try to create a scenario where both camps are comfortable. Those boxing, it's weight of the gloves, size of the ring, the purse, the way that's split. And Action News Jax was the only one that has hosted a debate between these two head to head. Now, there's no purses involved in this, but the parameters are set where both sides are comfortable. And when they came on for us, clearly both sides were comfortable with the situation. I can't speak for what happened with what happened with this week with Channel 4 or First Coast, but this is a prevent defense to an extent for Daniel Davis. He has a lead in a sense, even though the most recent polling is a dead heat. But we know Republicans show up well on Election Day. Also, right now in early voting, Republicans are doing very well compared to Democrats. So if that holds, he's looking pretty good. So if I'm him, I'm not looking to do anything to upset the apple cart.
And what about you, Claire? I mean, you and I, we always talk about current events in the newsroom, and we certainly, per se, not covering directly the mayor's race, but you've got to have some thoughts yourself.
Yeah, I mean, Ben Becker makes a good point about turnout so far. 42% of voters are Republican, 45% are Democrat. That's a smaller lead for Democrats than usual for early voting. Usually Democrats lead early voting and Republicans lead on Election Day. So, if people are voting along party lines, that could be pointing towards Davis leading, though. I mean, as you said, in polls, it's pretty neck and neck, and 11% of ballots so far are from no party affiliation. So that's really, I think, what will decide the election is those no party affiliation voters. The thing about a debate is, really when we don't have debates, the people that are harmed are the voters. They have less information about what these candidates will actually do in office. And I think in the Action News debate, we did get we got some of their policy, but a lot of the policy that was debated are things that they actually have common ground on. They both plan to fully fund JSO. They both want to bring back a program similar to Jacksonville Journey. There were just they both want to keep the UF Georgia game and, fund stadium improvements. So, further debate to parse out what the differences are and how they're going to enact their plans is helpful to voters, and it's disappointing when you don't get to see that.
Yeah, realistically, the only debate sometimes is what you see on the 6 and 11 and 10 o'clock news is when their commercials are battling against each other. And that brings to mind one thing that Donna Deegan had talked about this week. It's in our clip number 2. Many questions were being asked of her about whether this acrimony between the sides, the attack ads from the Davis camp, not per se Davis himself, might decrease that voter turnout. So Deegan was asked what can be done to get voters engaged and casting ballots. Her response, though, was initially to talk about Davis's negative campaigning.
Well, I can tell you that what we saw in the primary was just absolutely a bloodbath of terrible, negative commercials. And so not that this was my decision from the beginning of the race. I was never going to participate in that because I do think that it does hurt voter participation. I think people are so fatigued from it. And frankly, people deserve better than to be lied to and to be scared. I don't think fear ever gets us where we want to go. I think you have to bring people together. So quite frankly, to see my opponent now running an ad about unity is a little laughable, I've got to say. I mean, literally he has spent millions of dollars to trash first his Republican opponents and then me. And has not taken any accountability for anything that in our forums he has attended only the forums that have been friendly to him. I don't think he has tried to talk about anything controversial. It's been very, very difficult to get him to even cast a vision. I don't know what he stands for.
Again, you're listening to First Coast Connect, the Media Roundtable. Dan Scanlon here in for Melissa Ross, and we would love to hear some comments right now about what we're talking about. So give us a yell at 549-2937. Now, Davis did speak to reporters after his event at the FOP Hall, and he did respond to the question to media about the attack ads. And he said, every one of the marketing pieces or commercials that you've seen have been my opponent's own words, and you have someone who's going to stand with the sheriff's office and police to make sure that safe streets are what we have. So again, he is countering that what he is saying or what his attack ads are saying is what she is saying, and she countered, obviously, during the debate that that is not the case and did have the chance to expound upon it. So do you think she made her case, Nate?
I mean, I think she made her case. It's easy when your opponent's not there. Having an hour of television time to yourself is helpful. So yeah, I mean, I think she did an effective job. She certainly didn't make any obvious, gaffes, at least as far as I could see. And it's somebody who, from the beginning, I think she's been pretty clear about, the stuff she believes in and what she do. I think she's comfortable in that setting. So it served her well.
So any wrap-up thoughts here as we are coming within a little less than 2 weeks now?
I will say that I saw Aging Aunt Carsey reported that there are some forums that Donna Deegan didn't attend that only Davis attended. I think the Realtors and Builders who had already endorsed Davis, Deegan opted not to go. Another forum, I think at the FOP, she opted not to go. So there have been events that she's also opted out of, but I think, a community event is different than a televised debate that is accessible to everyone in the public.
We're getting some response online here. We got Tom saying that I want a mayor that represents the people of Jacksonville. To do that, a mayor needs to communicate with all the people of the city, exactly what Nate was saying. And we soon should have a phone call here. But any comments on the fact that, again, what Nate was saying, to carry on, communication is key, and it's more than just sitting down and talking to parents at a meeting on Beach Boulevard?
Well, that would be fine if we were back in 1960, 1970, 1980, 1990. But you raise a lot of money to get yourself on television, and that is your communication tool. What people see of you first. If they like you, they tend to vote for you. If they don't like you, they're not going to vote for you anyway, no matter what your policy is. And with the amount of money that the Davis campaign has raised and his PAC has raised, they put their money where they know initially it's going to work. They pull back on the negative ads on television, as you noticed. His wife is back on doing her set of ads, and of course he's there. I think he's got a secondary ad that's going on. And they let the sheriff do the negative stuff. They let the sheriff ad, which is paid by them, of course, but they let T.K. Waters do the negative stuff that we're going to see for the next 2 weeks. But that's the way campaigns, especially on this level, are run. Now, ironically, and this is a race we haven't talked about at all, the other major at-large race is the property appraiser. We haven't seen any ads from, is it Fisher? What's his name? Jason?
Jason Fisher,
See,
yes.
That's the problem. And Jason's been in the legislature, but no ads from him on the Republican side. What's up with that? Meanwhile, the former city councilman for Arlington District 1, George Morgan, is running TV ads that are positive, they look good. It's sort of a dichotomy of one race that most people didn't even know what they're going to see on the ballot. The other race, the mayor's race, that we talk about all the time. So it's there in front of everybody, but it's now just coming down to a question of who do you like? Not so much who you believe, but who do you like? And the Republicans are betting that T.K. Waters ad with Donna, coming up with these radical policies, whatever they are, will be the tipping point.
And yet you have this neutral ad that showed up this week from our previous sheriff, Nat Glover, that says, I'm not endorsing anyone, but stop the negativity. We've got a call here, so let's go to J.D. from the north side. J.D., what do you have to say? J.D., you there?
Yes. This is not rocket science. This is real simple, real easy. If you want change, then Donna is your candidate. If you want to continue the good old boy, nothing seems to get done that we've had the last 30 years, then the other boy is your candidate. This is not rocket science. If you really want to see Jacksonville move ahead and change, then Donna is the candidate.
All right. Thank you, and drive safe. Ben, your thoughts about rocket science?
Well, rocket science starts with a lot of money. And Davis has a big lead in that. And when I'm talking about big lead, $6, $7, whatever $1 million, Donna's at 1 or 2. And the thing that's striking to me is there are a lot of people who are aligned with Donna Deegan and her ideology in this town who have a lot of money, but for whatever reason, they're not cutting the kind of checks that you would think they would cut to help support her. Whereas Daniel Davis is raising that kind of money. So, I wonder where that is coming from. Why is that the scenario where she's not able to raise the kind of money that Daniel Davis is? Where once again there are big money people in this town, but I don't see the money necessarily coming from them.
Let's take some more phone calls here, and don't forget you can call us at 549-2937. We've got Ken on the north side. Ken, your thoughts about
Good morning, everybody.
who's doing what?
I just wanted to comment the incident the other day where the sheriff's office stormed into that woman's apartment, at the wrong address. I thought that was a perfect opportunity for Donna to fight back against the public safety piece with Davis, talking about, the sheriff wouldn't even make a comment about the situation, and this poor woman was traumatized and didn't even do anything wrong. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Well, thank you for that. Don't forget, though, that unfortunately rules do trump a lot of other things, and police don't normally want to talk about stuff until it's investigated. But, yeah, that certainly did not have good optics.
One thing I did think was interesting about the former sheriff's video, Nat Glover's video, where he did not endorse Donna Deegan, but he did defend her from some of this negative advertising. I think that there is, I think in some ways it's fair to have looked at that video as a bit of a rebuke of the current sheriff as well. I think it's pretty clear Nat Glover is not super comfortable with, it's one thing for a sheriff to endorse a candidate that's well within their right. I think there is a perception that this has gone far beyond that. I mean, he is in uniform in these ads. He has deputies behind him in uniform in these ads with cop cars behind them. I mean, that's just not stuff that you used to see. And one thing Nat Glover did say in that video is that police accountability is important. And that's something that, Donna Deegan's been walking a bit of a tightrope on police issues. She wants to make it clear she wants to fully fund JSO. In the state of Florida, you really have no choice but to. So it's kind of a moot point anyway. But yeah, I just wanted to make that point. I thought it was interesting that part of Nat Glover's video, he made clear that he thought that police accountability was also quite important.
And I've been around here long enough to have covered Nat Glover, and I have some nice memories of him being a pretty upright guy, also upright enough to be taller than most of us. Let's take one more phone call here, and let us go to Jerry in St. Augustine. Jerry, your thoughts?
Hey, good morning. Thank you. Yeah, I live in St. Augustine, and I'm considering moving to Jacksonville. It's a great city. And so I watched the debate. I believe that if a candidate is running, they should make themselves available for every single opportunity that's given to them so that the voters can get to know them. I feel like Donna is just so available, whether she answers the questions, fully or, as much as we'd like her to. She's open and honest. And frankly, if she wins, I'll probably move to Jax.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Okay, that's enough of that. We still have many more days to talk about this. Let's move on to the next really big story, and that is Dana Green's tenure as superintendent of the Duval County Public School System ends on July 24th. She signed a separation and retirement agreement Tuesday morning. Green's future was discussed during an emergency school board meeting Tuesday after a school day that had begun during a period when students were testing. She's been superintendent since 2018. Now, most interesting, I did think she was going to take the honorable way out of this because it was a no-win situation, and I thought she was going to retire. That way she'd get the benefits and there'd be discussion. So let's open it up. Claire, you've been covering this since day one, and you were monitoring on your day off, mind you, with Will Brown in the room. What do you think?
Yeah, I was out of town this week, so I wasn't covering on the day of that emergency meeting, but Will Brown had great coverage in Jacksonville today. But I caught up on it later, and I think there is a lot of community frustration about how it happened. It being an emergency meeting, the argument for why it was an emergency, I think, was a little thin. They said, there's narrow rules and when a meeting can be an emergency. It doesn't have to be noticed 48 hours ahead of time. And the attorney for the district said, because this impacts the safety and well-being of all students, it was an emergency. But she's not retiring until July, so a retirement a month and a half away, does that immediately impact the safety and well-being of all students right now? And, rob the public of the opportunity for public comment without the 2 days to plan on turning out that you would normally have with a publicly noticed meeting. there were less people, I think, than otherwise would have gone to this meeting. And last week we saw, a rally in support of Dr. Green. We saw people turn out to the separate special meeting, which was publicly noticed ahead of time, to speak in favor of Dr. Green. And there were less commenters this week, in part, I think, because there was such little notice of it. So I think there's public frustration about that it happened so quickly. Some school board members said that Dr. Green had told them that she was thinking about retiring April 17th, 2 weeks ago. That was before the letter from Commissioner Manny Diaz accusing the district of holding back 50 misconduct reports. So there's some questions about the timeline, and Dr. Green hasn't done interviews herself. She didn't speak at all during the emergency meeting. And then there's accusations from other school board members that really she's being forced out. This isn't a retirement. So there's still a lot of questions around how much is by choice, how much is by force, and whether it happened through the appropriate channels at the right time. The district is still doing an ongoing investigation.
And for folks who have forgotten, this has really reached the crux of this matter because of Douglas Anderson, a school teacher, was arrested and let go because of inappropriate behavior, the school police report says, with a student. And then 3 other teachers have been moved out of classroom. So there's the impression or taint that she was unaware of what was happening, yet we seem to forget that their personnel person was moved out of that position as well. So maybe she became the public head of this controversy. Boy, we got a lot of comments here. Rich says, I have to roll my eyes when I hear that the supervisor of elections is disheartened with the lack of voter participation. Yes, well, we shall see what happens in a week and a half. Let's go to Linda on the phone. Linda, what are your thoughts about the superintendent situation?
Well, I'm very frustrated because we need to always say that she's an appointed position, but I really wanted to ask you when you said she took the honorable way out. What has been honorable about her being bashed inadvertently, not directly, by DeSantis saying that Jacksonville School Board or school district makes him look bad? He's doing pretty good at that by himself. What options does she have? If this is truly, now we always do hold a head responsible unless you're a former president. What happened to the principal of the school? What happened to the administrator? How far back did this go? Are we going back to VD and look on his watch? So I need you to clarify, because that's a framing comment when you said that Diana Green took the honorable way out. What's been honorable about the school board this year at all? Please define that, because we citizens who rely on media, we need just your opinion, but mostly we need information. So when you say she took the honorable way out, what was honorable? What were her options? What was her choice? Did she have one? I don't think so at an emergency meeting. Please tell me.
Okay. I say honorable because this way there was no acrimony, there was no negative vote, there was no yelling and screaming. She saw the writing on the wall, and she decided this would be the simplest way to handle it. So maybe I should have said simple versus honorable. What do you think, Ben?
Well, let's look at this, right? I've spoken to a number of people, and frankly, a lot of this between Dr. Green and the state, and I will say the state, goes back to when she defied Governor DeSantis over the mask mandate. And from there, things got doubly hard when they had the grand jury report about misconduct in the district. Okay, so now you're at strike 2 for Dr. Green. Then from there, you had the situation with the review of the books, and people on the DeSantis side of the tracks and those who support what the state wants to do. We'll look at the district as slow walking the book review process, which left empty shelves in libraries in the district, which some would say who support DeSantis, that would say that was an attempt to embarrass those who support the governor. So that was strike 3. So at that point, it was pretty much a coup de grace, not coup de grace, but the coup de grace would have been anything beyond that. And then the Douglas Anderson thing hit, and that was it. It was just a matter of time before Dr. Green was going to be finished with the district. And it's unfortunate how it went down. I'm sure there's the supporters of Dr. Green look at it as a political situation. This was a career assassination for Dr. Green versus on the flip side, those who support the governor believe the district has been going downhill for a number of years under her, despite her being a former superintendent of the year. So you have that dichotomy that's happening right now at the district, and you look at the school board, and frankly, if this would have went to a vote, I mean, you had three that certainly would have been against Dr. Green if it was a termination. You would have three that would have been for a termination, and the swing vote probably would have been the board chair, Coker, and we saw how she went eventually by agreeing to the separation agreement. But it would have been interesting to see if there was a vote for termination, how Coker would have went with that or not.
You know, I've been around here.
I do want to point out that she's also was on the so-called hit list of Governor DeSantis as far as the possibility of someone running against her in the future.
Let's take some phone calls here. We've got Liz Anderson. What are your thoughts?
Hey, thanks so much for having this conversation. You know, the whole situation around the superintendent was super confusing for me. I think, and it was for many people. The politics behind it were so clear. We had people coming up and kind of talking about the layers of issues that they were having with the superintendent over a period of time. The grand jury report kept coming up. You know, that was something that the school board had a third-party investigator come in and just as of February cleared the district and said that any errors had been corrected. And even those reporting errors were prior to the superintendent. So we've got a superintendent that has corrected problems, that took this person, a DA, and now has arrested them after decades of, misconduct in the school. And that's the person that we're holding accountable. And then for the school board to have a quote unquote emergency meeting to do this, and to cut out the public from being able to come and share their perspective, to not have the political courage to take a vote on whether or not they actually supported forcing her out. If this is a real genuine interest on the part of the superintendent to retire, we could have gotten through testing. All our kids are testing right now, and we could have done this in a way that was much better for public education and Duval County Public Schools, the children and the staff that we serve. It's very disappointing, and more than that, I think that because we see so much politics at play in this whole conversation, the community needs to be really on its toes about what happens next and who will be the next superintendent. I think that there's plenty of political motivation here. We see a superintendent search in Broward County that the third-party firm has said they might have 2 or 3 candidates that are even qualified. The pool is very shallow, and Duval County is going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel, and we need to watch for political fingers in this pot.
And for those who don't know, Ms. Anderson, is a former school board member. And as I'm sure you know, Ms. Anderson, there have been more superintendents in this school district since the 1980s than I can shake a stick at. I came here with Herb Sang, so you tell me how many we've lost through attrition, new jobs, or just wanting to get out of Dodge. So I thank you for your comment. Let us go to Jimmy Midget. Jimmy, are you there?
Hey, yes, I'm here. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I watched that special meeting myself, and I've been close to the process, as close as I could stand. And I was really disappointed that during the board meeting, they did not allow Dr. Diana Green to speak. Normally, whenever issues are discussed, they call on the superintendent, and that's the only way that she's allowed to speak during that part of the meeting, is if the school board member asks a question of her. And so she simply had to sit there. And there were times during that conversation where I think her personal insight and whatever she might have offered to the board would have been very helpful. And I was just disappointed by the disrespect shown by the school board in not allowing her to speak on her own behalf at that moment. So I do think it portends poorly for the future of education in Duval County. And I agree with Liz Anderson, who just spoke, that we have to watch this process very closely as a new superintendent is selected, because there are clearly political factors at play that are not traditionally the province of the Duval County School Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, a summer of unrest coming. Just thoughts to the panel as to what we have to look forward to as a next step. Do we find an interim in-house, or do they go directly to hunting?
Well, we're going to get an interim from in-house. That's the easy path to do, just as a caretaker aspect. The question, the real thing will be to see which of the school board members are going to be on the, quote, search committee, what firm they hire to do this search, And as Jimmy indicated, how wide a net are they going to do? When we did the VD search some years ago, there was some feeling that the game was already rigged when Nikolai got the job, and Nikolai stayed here just long enough to make sure that he could get that Detroit job, where he's intimately more happy than he was down here in Jacksonville. And you're right, we haven't had anybody here since Pratt that was able to stay, and everybody agreed on, since Ed Pratt Daniels was superintendent for that period of time, and Ed came right out of the school system all the way up the ladder to become superintendent. But this is, you just have to watch to see how rigged this game is going to be, because yes, the governor's staff and those are going to be looking at what happens in Jacksonville, because we're a bit of a bellwether city for the conservative movement around the state, and getting these school boards under control so that you can have everything that's on the legislative and the governor's agenda in place in Jacksonville. You got to get Jacksonville under control up here in the north. We're an outlier from everything else in North Florida, so we're middle of the road. So they've got to get control of it. And it'll be interesting to see what candidates they come up with. I guess we'll see something by July or September.
Interesting comment here from Josh Taylor, who's a local artist. He says Douglas Anderson, unfortunately, has a vast and storied history of questionable leadership and inappropriate teacher-student relationships. The upsetting part of the whole situation is that it hasn't been brought to light until today. Nate?
Yeah, and the fact that some of these issues long predated Diana Green, I think, adds to some of the suspicion and frustration about her being forced out, which is what this is. This is not a planned, elegant retirement in any sense. This is a quasi-termination. And when an official like that is terminated, there should be a very clear delineation about why. And we don't have that. This has all been incredibly fast-moving. And it is all very hazy, and there is a very obvious kind of political context here. I would add to Fred's remarks to say that I think an additional question is what actual talent is going to be interested in taking this job over. I mean, I think Florida generally is a pretty fraught place for public education, and I question whether a job like this, especially with a couple of like Moms for Liberty aligned fanatics on the board, I just don't know that this looks like a very attractive job to some, very eminently qualified professional who doesn't live in Florida.
Back in my younger days when I worked at the Times-Union, we actually had a mentorship program with high school journalism programs, and my first assignment was Douglas Anderson. So I spent about 3/4 of a year working with the students, and then I was asked to leave. Still to this day, don't know why, but it was an interesting eye-opener. Claire?
Just to note to Nate's point, Diana Green was actually among the lowest paid superintendents of the largest school districts in the state. But before last year, when she got a raise at $275,000, she was among the lowest. Even when they bumped it up to $300,000, she was still among the lowest of the largest districts. The district actually offered her more, and she declined it, saying that it should go back to the schools. So in order to recruit someone to replace her, I think the district is going to have to cough up more money than they're coughing up currently for a superintendent's salary. There are, I think, at least 8 districts in Florida that are currently looking for an appointed superintendent, so there's a lot of competition. So it's going to be a difficult search.
The lure better be loaded with money, I guess. Well, let us go on to another school issue that Claire has covered and we've all been looking at. Duval County School Board approved a new policy that restrooms and locker rooms be separated by sex assigned at birth and not asserted gender identity. And this follows some of a state action as well. So, Claire, take it away.
Right, so the school board put in a new policy into their school board manual. It's written from scratch. There was no policy in the manual mentioning locker rooms or restrooms at all previously. There had been long-standing guidance that students should be able to access the restroom that aligns with their consistently asserted gender identity that was in the former LGBTQ support guide that was put in place in 2012. So for years, it's been the case that trans students can access the restroom that aligns with their consistently asserted gender identity. Then when the district pulled its support guide in 2021, has been hashing through it for the past year based on new Florida laws, that's when they came to this conclusion in their new support guide that they're going to make restrooms strictly separated by gender assigned at birth, and trans students can either use the restroom that corresponds with the gender they were assigned at birth or use single stall restrooms. And then they decided to also add it to the school board manual, which I think some school board members, Daryl Willey in particular, took issue with, saying that, it was a bit premature, it was before state law, and it was before the district had a chance to do an audit of the availability of these single stall restrooms. They don't know how many each school has, how accessible they are to students, and, to ensure that this can actually be implemented fairly so that, all students have access to a restroom where they feel safe and comfortable.
And obviously, we've got some state action on that front as the legislature closes out their session. Can you refresh me on that?
Sure. So also this week, the Florida legislature passed new bills regarding care for trans minors and restroom access in public buildings, detention centers, prisons, and schools. Also aligning, similar to what the school board did, that it is strictly by gender assigned at birth. Otherwise, it's a trespassing misdemeanor. So there are a range of issues that I think transgender advocates, LGBTQ advocates have about it, not the least of which being, how could this be enforceable? And then, of course, the who ends up being policed and harassed in restrooms are most likely going to be trans people who are already at the most risk.
The question is, enforceability, and then the angst that is faced by those involved, those accusing and those also under the gun. So, guys, any comments on all of this that's transpired this week, state and local, on transgender and bathroom assignment and lack of a bathroom to go to?
One thing I'll say is that this does sort of illustrate there is this kind of like dueling kind of dynamic with Diana Green where she has lots of supporters who like what she's doing, probably in part because during the pandemic she did push back on state guidance on pandemic safety measures, and is perceived to be an opponent of the governor, and yet I think is also been perceived as going quite far to enforce some of these state mandates that are emanating from Tallahassee and from the governor, and enforcing them with a little bit more zeal than was necessary. And so there are these kind of two images of her that don't square super neatly. And I've just found that, particularly as she's been on the hot seat this last, week and a half or 2 weeks, that just kind of really stands out. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it does come to, from her position, it does come to a position. One of the reasons she was hired because she's fairly politically astute, and one of the more mature superintendent candidates and superintendents that have been hired around the state. That's one of the reasons why she was brought here, and she's proven herself to be there. But she's no idiot when it comes to reading the tea leaves. And this business about these transgender restrooms and the issue concerning books. Imagine that, banning books in school. But that's what we came down to, were things that were going to happen. And superintendents, once the legislature took their actions and the governor was going to sign off on it, it was going to happen. So the best thing to do from an administrative standpoint is to go ahead and get a bit ahead of some of this and enact some local rules that prepare your community for what is going to happen. And this business with transgender restrooms, it was going to happen because the legislature that we've elected and the governor that we've elected have already made the determination. Boys go with boys and girls go with girls to the restroom, period. And they don't want to see anything else that contradicts that. And they believe that, especially in middle school and high school, that those kids, our kids, will be so confused that they don't know who's transgender or who may be moving to a homosexual side of the fence. They believe that the kids are so ignorant that they don't know their own classmates and what they're doing. So it's a concern.
Last word, I ask, Ben.
Well, we had the comment there about Dr. Green and her being politically astute. I will say this, in the lead up to her retirement or force out, wherever you want to term it, the other day, I reached out to a number of people around the community who I thought would have insight and even communication with her ahead of this, looking for any piece of nuggets I could get. and information. And what was striking to me is people who I thought would be close with her, be aligned with her, in communication with her, were people who actually turned out they didn't have a whole lot of relationships with her. People who you would think she would be aligned with politically, in a sense of building that kind of support amongst leaders in the community. These are really people that I think would have tried to rally around her, but to the extent they didn't have her phone number. And these are people that I would have bet money would have had a tight relationship with her, and they just didn't. And they indicated to me it just wasn't there. And they were kind of surprised themselves that they didn't have that kind of relationship with her. So as far as her being politically astute, maybe some areas she is, but at least based on my experience, the people I've spoken with, there were some missed opportunities.
Well, we are hoping here at WJCT for an exit interview with Dr. Green. We'll see what happens. Now, it is finally time for our lightning round. And now this is where I asked the gang here, what are your big stories or big thoughts about right now? Fred?
Well, I just saw the announcement last night that one of the major apartment complexes up on the north side is being sold. And Hilltop Apartments, I believe it is, being sold. And interesting enough, the one of the development corporations, the company that's buying it, is already asked the Northside Development Corporation up there on Myrtle Avenue in Moncrief to sort of intercede already for social services to make sure everything goes well out there. It should be an interesting turnaround because here we have a private company coming in and taking over a low-income major housing complex and already doing some things to make sure that the rats and roaches don't return back to that, and we don't have this complex on the news. So it's an interesting turn of events, a multi-million-dollar purchase, by the way, for this company.
Ben, what do you think? What's your lightning round?
Dan, I have breaking news. Are you ready?
Yes.
World Health Organization announced in the past 20 minutes, COVID is over. It's done. Finito. That means we can go out and celebrate Cinco de Mayo without any problems.
What do I do with all my masks? Claire?
I'll make just a quick point about Dr. Green in terms of this bathroom discussion. She did go back and forth with the state, saying that if they did pass this policy, it could result in a loss of federal funding. This is an ongoing debate between the state and the federal position on how Title IX applies to protections for trans students. So I think this debate is not over, and I will say Dr. Green did push back against what the state was asking in recent months. As for the lightning round, I'll point to one of my colleague Will Brown's stories this week about Fruit of the Barren Trees, a local company from a Jax native addressing affordable housing. Great profile. Check that out on jaxtoday.org.
Nate?
Yeah, so there's an important pretrial hearing in the criminal case against two JEA executives that's coming up on May 15th. The prosecution released the witness list for that hearing this morning, and it includes a Florida Power and Light vice president, along with a bunch of other city and former JEA officials. And so it looks like that's actually going to be kind of a mini trial preview.
But I'm sure they'll find you boring.
Oh, yeah. Yes, yes.
I'll be having shrimp tomorrow at the Shrimp Fest, the 58th annual, not 59th, because they lost a year for COVID. The Florida Roundup today at noon. We'll take a closer look at why Florida is moving to restrict foreigners from buying property and how the legislation could have a wider impact on the state's real estate market. Plus, historians rejoice. There's a proposal to allow developers to bulldoze historic buildings, and it gets demolished after an outcry. And on this week's What's Health Got to Do with It, we'll examine cystic fibrosis, plus what it's like to live with the bipolar disorder. Tomorrow at 4 p.m., Sunday at 9 p.m., and we will be right back.
It's 2023. We've got electric cars, we've got artificial intelligence, we've got supercomputers in our pockets. And as of this weekend, we'll officially have a brand new 74-year-old King of the United Kingdom. Next time on Today Explained, why on earth we're still doing monarchy in 2023.
Tonight at 6:30 here on WJCT News 89.9.
Most of us know what it's like to run out of money by the end of the month. Is the same thing going to happen to the government? Also, this week, another big bank is rescued, interest rates hit a 16-year high, and Hollywood's writers go on strike.
We are fighting for writing to continue to be a sustainable career in Los Angeles, in New York, and across the country.
It's been a big week, and we'll wrap it all up on the Friday News Roundup, next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
And welcome back. Well, the Sing Out Loud Festival is back, and it is bigger than ever. It returns this September with the first ever Francis Field Showcase in downtown St. Augustine, right next to their parking garage, featuring performances by the Black Keys, Mumford & Sons, Maggie Rogers, Lord Huron, and more. And St. Johns County residents can buy tickets before anyone else starting today. So Diana Markovitz, the Sing Out Loud Festival project manager, is live on the line with us right now. And Diana, I haven't been there. I've heard about it. So you tell me, why should I go?
Yes, because this is the biggest thing we've had in probably a decade. We had Mumford & Sons on that same field about 2013. So we're so excited to have them come back, plus the Black Keys, who have never played St. Augustine. And then you've got, this other lineup of Maggie Rogers and Lord Huron and Yola, and just a really, in my opinion, a beautiful, rounded lineup in a historic downtown St. Augustine. It really kind of creates this very special atmosphere that, because people want to go to music festivals, but they also need that experience. A part of it, too, you've got so many festivals happening this year. What makes this one special is that it's in the nation's oldest city on the water. You get to, go to an old fort, you get to go to the beach, you get to do a whole bunch of cool stuff, and then see these 9 massive headliners. That to me is pretty spectacular.
Sure, September 22nd and 23rd. And you're right, you're literally steps from the old city gate and then down the street, and grab your shrimp, grab your tour of the oldest schoolhouse, go to the fort, wander to the waterfront. It's all within literally steps. And then you're right, there's a whole bunch of other things, not just on Francis Field, right?
Absolutely. Sing Out Loud is kind of this larger month-long celebration of music. So this is kind of one of the biggest aspects of it, but we'll still be announcing more. Everyone loves those free local artist showcases where people from, St. Augustine, Jacksonville, Gainesville, Tampa get to play the festival. So that's a huge component of it. We will also be doing a lot of artist development. So bands that want to take their music to another level will have a chance to speak with national songwriters and people who, produce these records and kind of give that insider info. We've also partnered with the Lincolnville Porch Fest and the St. Augustine Record Fair and the whole Songwriters Festival. So September is really this massive month of celebration for all things live music. And then, of course, just this, amazing weekend with these headliners that, tour the world right now. It's kind of awesome. It's more than kind of awesome.
I love Porch Fest in Jacksonville. It's almost like YouTube when you're walking around. You get to walk and go to somebody's porch, enjoy some live music right up close, and then wander down the street, do some more. You probably have some food trucks. It's just one of those wonderful things. Then the AMP has got something on September 19th with the seasonal night market. There's a record fair that's coming up on September 24th. There's so many of these fun things. And then you talk about the songwriters. That Songwriter Festival is September 29th through October 1st. You get to meet, greet, sing along, listen, tap your feet through all of this in what they never told us about when I was in school in New York City, the nation's oldest and first city.
This is true. Pensacola, Florida might fight us for that. But yes, it is the nation's oldest city, and I agree with you. I didn't know that until I actually moved there. But that's what's super exciting about this entire festival is, again, to your point, you get to go explore a city that has so much history and so much beauty. And, I know Jacksonville's got that same beauty. So we're excited to welcome our neighbors down and anybody outside the city who's just never experienced the beauty and the nature and the history of this city. And then Francis Field, it's kind of cool because it's literally walking distance at any point. Even if you're on the beach, it really is a central location to see all these bands.
Yes, believe it or not, and those who have been down to St. Augustine understand that pun. So tell me, Diana, tell us something more about these bands. The Black Keys, Mumford & Sons, Maggie Rogers. This is not a folk fest or a rock fest. This is an everything fest, right?
Agreed, yes. It's Yola also is a kind of British blues pop singer as well. So you've got a whole bunch of different genres that we think creates this weekend of, people that, you love the Black Keys or you love Mumford & Sons or you love both of them, but you also are exposed to Maggie Rogers and Lord Huron, who will be in that pantheon of those bands eventually. Maggie Rogers is just an amazing singer, and if you haven't checked her out, please do, because she's one of the most talented people, and just really making the waves as far as how she approaches music and being a part of that spotlight. She really has kind of embraced that. But again, you've got a whole bunch of different bands, and Black Keys produced the Yola album, and they're playing on that Friday night. We're hoping for some kind of super jam, in my opinion. That would be super awesome if that happened. But with the other bands, Amos Lee, an amazing songwriter, S.G. Goodman, all these bands, and Elle King is very, she's a wonderful, rowdy, rockabilly country singer. She's just got so much personality. And I think once you start to kind of dig into these artists, you're going to realize that this is truly going to be a really, really fun event where you're celebrating the music that you probably know, but also finding a bunch of new ones that will be on your playlist for hopefully years to come.
Well, don't forget, if you're a St. Johns County resident, the local presale starts at 10 o'clock today and runs through 10 p.m. on Sunday. That's St. Johns County residents getting that first shot at the tickets. And then the Francis Field Showcase tickets go on sale at 10 a.m. Friday, May 12th, exclusively at singoutloudfestival.com. And your ticket options are general 2-day admission, platinum 2-day admission, and single-day tickets are not available. They're not too expensive. And again, Diana, just one last word. This is a super deal if you want live music and so much more within walking distance.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We feel the same, and we hope a lot of people come out and experience this. We expect this to happen for many, many years to come. So we hope that people trust us on this first year, that they'll have an amazing time. St. Johns County residents, if you've got a zip code that's within that county, you can absolutely come and buy your tickets starting in about 2 minutes all the way through Sunday. And that's first dibs before they go on general on sale.
Thanks, Diana. Now let's talk about the people that make this happen. David Luckin, our executive producer, senior producer Heather Schatz, our director Isabella Da Silva, technical help from Morning Edition host Michelle Corum, and our theme music composed and performed by Club Des Belugas. Have any questions or comments about First Coast Connect? Send an email to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. I'm Dan Scanlon, sitting in for Melissa Ross.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Of WJCT.